Joining me now in the studio is a security expert, Oladende Ario. Thank you for being here this morning.
Good morning. You just showed me the hotel in Sofia where I embarked my 58th birthday some 12 years ago.
Oh, wow. Look at us, just bringing you memories without even knowing.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, but, you know, you're seeing the protests going on, and, you know, there's so much support, so much reaction to what's going on in Ukraine. What do you think is driving this?
It's all expected. I've always said that the UN is a bulldog without any teeth and has no bite. Because if it had a bite, things wouldn't have gone this way. What we experienced was a throwback to the days of Pharaoh in the Bible, who just wake up and invade any of the small countries around it, take over their land, impound their king or royalties or whatever, and then they become a part of Egypt. I never imagined that in today's world, with the advancement of technology, science, and management, especially in human development and human management, somebody will just wake up from somewhere, whatever the grievance Putin might have had, it went too far. And that is, each time you bomb a building, we are in a building now. If anybody says he wants to go and hit Channels TV, God forbid.
God forbid.
Right. We are in this building. If you bomb the building, you are killing people. For every bombing that took place, human lives were lost. And unfortunately, they just give figures, 200. Who went in to count them? The debris was so terribly created that nobody that had his head on his neck will attempt to go in there. It was double risk because you were not sure of coming back alive. There could be uninspired bombs there. And then, of course, the building could come down on people. That we are witnessing this at this day and time is unfortunate. So people protesting is the only way of saying we are not pleased. And they can only protest in their home country, sending messages through their home government to the UN.
Yeah, but you know, there's this argument about whether countries should send aid, military aid, or they should send humanitarian aid, or they should remain neutral. And I've heard analysts say that Africa should remain neutral in all of this. Is it possible to remain neutral in the world that we live in, you know, when there's crisis or war happening somewhere else?
I want to leave Africa out of my consideration. Because
why is that?
The entire African continent is battling with instability, insecurity, economic crisis, and several other teaching challenges. So they're already bogged down. It will be a waste of resources for any African country, including our golden boy, Rwanda, to think that they can get involved, okay? Because it may have dire consequences. I had Putin in one video saying that any African country that got involved in this crisis will be wiped off the surface of the earth. I don't want to put anything past him to that extent. Now, all the other countries who are protesting, don't forget that they're all neighbors. They're within the same region and with the same hemisphere. So getting to deal with them is not going to be a big deal for Russia. But then, will the world fold their arms and be watching such carnage, you know, unleashed on human beings and not offer assistance? Again, in offering assistance, are you going to now be offering humanitarian aid assistance or military aid? Because if you are offering...
What do you think Ukraine needs right now?
You see, if I have my way, I will arrest their president and cane him. He led the country into this...
President?
Yeah, he led them into this nonsense. I mean, you knew your capacity, your strength, militarily. And perhaps it was led into believing that, don't worry, if anything happens, we're here for you. Unfortunately, something has been happening. And nobody is willing to come out and say, oh yeah, let's go.
Okay, we've moved past that conversation where, you know, we're wondering what was running through President Volodymyr Zelensky's mind. But I also want to point out that Ukraine is a sovereign state.
Nobody is doubting that.
Yes,
but in your sovereignty,
in your
sovereignty, you must also be able to assess your capacity to fend off an invader.
Yeah, but what about the parts where the Russian president said he had no intentions of invading Ukraine? And yet he still did it. Now, let's move forward now. May 9th is the next date now that eyes are focused on. And that's because on this day, it is suspected that Russia will be declaring victory over Ukraine. Do you think that will still happen, even though Russia says, no, we have no plans to do that? If they're even planning a humanitarian pause for May 5th, 6th, and 7th to allow civilians leave Mariupol. Do you think that Russia can be trusted at this point?
As
President
it is,
Putin's words.
If my reading of Putin's mind is something to go by, he's tired. Okay, and I can tell you, technically and surreptitiously, they're looking for ways to end the carnage. Because it's not, when they say Russian-Ukraine crisis, I mean, war, it's not Russia-Ukraine, it's Russia hitting Ukraine. Because when you try to weigh the consequences of the war, it's a lot to weigh there, the damage on the part of Ukraine. To that extent, especially when the world powers, who should have frontally intervened, are being careful, being pussy-footed in their reactions. I would rather the entire world, maybe in prayer or supplication or mere wishes, okay, we look forward to Putin respecting his commitments. And then we can begin to think of winding down the crisis so that Ukraine as a nation can now go back to the process of rebuilding. Because as it is, I was in Syria, in Damascus, before the damage, and I was in Damascus after the damage. Without being an indigene, a tourist for that matter, I was in tears. I was imagining the number of lives lost and what it will take them in terms of money, competencies, capacities to rebuild Damascus. Now, looking at Kiev and other countries, cities in Ukraine, it's the same feeling I'm getting. So the earlier we put an end, the better.
Yeah, but can this war end without negotiations? Because Russia is refusing to come back to the table. They're saying the Ukrainians are deceiving them. The Ukrainians are saying, well, Russia is deceiving us. Nobody wants to get back to the table.
Don't forget that.
Everybody's still holding on to what they, what they're demanding.
Don't forget that there's a working relationship or accord between Russia and China. Whether we like it or not, China has become an economic power to be reckoned with, not like the China of old. To that extent, I'm sure they are talking, okay? And you can also see that America, UK, and their allies, the NATO allies too, they are not reacting, violently, so to say.
What do you mean by reacting
violently? They were not, I've not seen them coming out boldly to say we're going to be fighting Russia because of Ukraine. There were a few moves which are, for me, very insignificant, considering the volume and the magnitude of the damage done to Ukraine.
They never promised to put boots on the ground. Anyway. No, they never promised to fight.
No, they wouldn't promise. But you will expect that if you are allies, you and I, we will not be colleagues, so to say. But if I drive by and I see you in distress, naturally, I want to stop by and ask if I could help. Okay, little if it's me. So one would have expected all of that. So I can tell you that at the global level, there are moves to bring down all of it. Because it has to come to an end. The world has to move on. Ukraine has to restart, nation building.
When do you think this war will end, and how do you think it will end?
That's a big question. I wish I'm Google. Well, people have been gambling, but I can tell you that it will not exceed May. It will not exceed May. Because when you look at it, in retrospect, Putin will have been asking himself questions. Haven't I gone too far? But for me, it's going to end in ICC for war crimes against humanity.
You really think so?
I mean, there are cases in history. Manuel of Noriega, you remember the man? He got himself involved. Chancellor of Liberia, Dito. I mean, there are several others, but I can readily remember those two cases.
Okay, so let's talk about the millions of dollars that are going into Ukraine. The UK yesterday announced £300 million for military assistance for Ukraine. Today they're now saying an additional $45 million for humanitarian efforts. The US is asking for $33 billion. Are they indirectly funding this war?
I don't want to see it as indirectly funding the war. In their shoes, I probably wouldn't have announced the military financial assistance. Okay, even if there will be, I would rather we focus on humanitarian assistance because houses, people have lost their houses, lost their businesses, their investment, everything. Some have just nothing beyond the dresses they have on their bags. So they shouldn't have been looking at that end because it's not, as it is, Ukraine does not need military assistance. No, they need diplomacy, diplomatic assistance. Okay, if it takes.
But what should they do while Russian forces are coming at them?
But like I told you, I didn't mean I'm I'm Nigerian president now. I probably would have gone to Putin if it means frustrating, begging him to put an end to the carnage because it's against humanity, it's against common sense. There is nothing that can justify what they have gone through in Ukraine. So I would rather they focus on bringing peace about, perhaps through the back door. Okay, and not aggravating or escalating. Because when Putin heard, they've given them money, military aid, he might, sending the wrong signal.
He's talked about that, and he's warned countries from sending military aid to Ukraine. And Russian forces, Russian missiles have actually been attacking, some of the military depots where some of these weapons are being stored. Security expert Olade Ndiario, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your joining us this morning.
Nice to see you anyway. Thank you very much for having me.
We'll see.